send me the...
Will do. Will do. How's the sound? Is the sound okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
you. Okay, great. Okay, so what I did was I created a process. I used the Amazon payments as an example because I found them to be the most, a little more complex than the other two, than the Shopify payment and the PayPal payments. The reason why I find them a little more complex is the fact that the deposits or the payments to the bank don't happen on the same day, or the reports don't always tie in directly to show which transactions comprised of each deposit. So it's more like they have your account, the payments from customers come in, they deduct the fees, and then sometimes they'll hold an amount as a reserve, and then they'll deposit an amount that's net of whatever they're holding for the reserve on the following day. Usually it seems like it's the following day. But so it really is, if you think about it, it really is like a holding account. It's not like undeposited funds where you're, well, and I guess you can look at it both ways in a sense, but
in some way it is, yeah.
Yeah, but it's almost like a bank account. It's like you're accumulating the payments, and then you're making deposits, and the deposit amounts don't always neatly tie in to transactions on a particular day. Most often they do, but they don't always. And I can show you, just to demonstrate that, we can look at, in Amazon Payments, there is a section here for payment statement view, which is going to be a really great tool that we're going to use as part of what I'm working on. But if we take a look at, let me see, let's take one where it's not as straightforward. Okay, so I think June 4th. Right, so you have here beginning balance, previous statements, unavailable balance. So in other words, they had all this money that had accumulated, and what they're saying is that's unavailable. They're holding that for a reserve for some reason, which I'm not sure why sometimes they do that. And then you'll have new charges for that day. Okay, so this is a statement from the June 4th to June 5th, right? As you can see up there at the top, June 4th to June 5th. And these are the total charges from payments from customers that came in on that day, on the 4th. And then you have the fees that they're deducting, and you have the subtotal. But then then there's your total balance, which is your beginning reserve balance plus the new payments net of the fees. And then they've still got an unavailable balance. So part of that they're still withholding, and that gives us the actual payment amount that they're sending to the bank. So in other words, if you just take a look at these two components, which is the payments that came in net of the fees, which is $383.19, and you look at the next day's deposit, $233, does not tie in. It's because there's reserve amounts that they're holding. So it's really, that this is the most, I found this to be the most challenging one for that reason. But I've kind of came up with a pretty good process to reconcile these things. The great news about Amazon is that the reports are very good, and I think we'll be able to use them to create templates that then can be sent into NetSuite and automate the matching. Okay, and I want to demonstrate that. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate that now, and I want to kind of walk through what I envision to be a process which is somewhat manual, but it automates the matching. And then, like we've spoken, over the past few weeks, is that what we're going to try to do is first build the kind of skeleton, the framework of how it would work manually, and then build on top of that different automations and things to make it even more efficient. But I think this seems to me pretty efficient, even if we leave it as I'm going to show you. Okay, so the first thing to know is that we're going to use NetSuite's account reconciliation tool, whereby we feed a statement into NetSuite, and then we run a tool that helps us reconcile. So the first step in that is to extract a report out of Amazon Payment. Let's go through the full navigation of this. So if we log out of Amazon, I'm going to log out and log back in just to show where to go, in the website. Let's see, here we go. Log out. Okay. password. Okay, so when you log in, you get this kind of dashboard. We're going to go to View Payment Summary right over here. Okay, click on that. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're really essentially doing is downloading the equivalent of a bank statement, and then we're going to look on this page to get our ending balance. Okay, so we're going to go to Date Range Reports. Okay, and we're going to click on Generate Reports to generate a report for that day. Okay, I've created one for June 18th to June 18th. We would download that. Okay, and this report comes in like this with a lot of the detail. Now, this format, NetSuite's not going to accept this format. NetSuite has a specific format that it accepts. I'm working on a macro to create this template, this this format that comes out of Amazon Payment. Instead, it will look like this. This is the format that NetSuite accepts. Okay.
Yeah.
It has the date here. The name I'm going to get to when I'm finished showing you the process. I'm going to get back to this field and see how we can work on that. Transaction ID, transaction type is converted to the kind of names that NetSuite uses for the different types of transactions, the amounts, and the memo. Okay. The memo represents, this is all the same for every day's transactions would have the same one.
So what does this number corresponds to?
So it corresponds to, so if we would, let me show you. If I do one for, let's take this one, okay? This is for a range of dates, June 1st to June 6th, and I download that. That field is the settlement ID.
Settlement ID.
Yeah. Okay. So settlement ID really is a full day's transactions. Okay. Now, yeah. So I put that in the memo field. The reason why I chose the memo field is because that's a field that will show up on the bank reconciliation tool. I wanted to get an individual transaction.
I'm just wondering, the way the memo is being currently utilized is it's more of a descriptive field, meaning that it jogs the memory. This seems like this will cross-reference it back with Amazon payments.
Yes.
So it's sort of like an internal ID for Amazon. Is that how I'm reading it?
Exactly. Now, it would have been nice to have its own special kind of field in NetSuite to have that, but the reason why
something that we can utilize the custom field.
We may be able to. The only reason why at this point I didn't is because the account reconciliation only pulls in these fields. So when you're doing the reconciliation, I wanted there to be visibility into this field, into this number. So. Okay, but yeah, that's essentially what it is. So it would convert the file to this format. You'd save the file somewhere, and then what we're going to do is we're going to import the file as if it's a bank statement. Okay, as if it's a regular bank statement, and the navigation for that, it would be bank, import online banking data. Okay, I just want to make sure I delete an existing one because I've tested this. Yeah, okay, good. So again, bank, transactions, bank, import online banking data. Okay, choose file. And we're going to use this one, sample Amazon payment payout file. That's the one I did for June 18th. Make sure you select the correct account, which in this case is Shopify Amazon. That's our clearing account. Click submit. Okay, and it says 14 transactions have been successfully imported. There are 9 matched transactions. So NetSuite already figured out which ones have matches. When you click OK, it's going to take us.
So there are 5 that are outside of that.
Exactly. And it's going to take us to the reconciliation tool. But before we start reconciling, let's just set it up. So we've got the statement end date would be June 18th. That's the date. There's no start date because it's the first time we're doing it. Now I chose one day as though we're doing one day. Really, I'm assuming what we'll do is we'll do a range. We'll do from the beginning of time, since the earliest transaction sitting here, which looks to me like May 22nd, all the way through whatever date we choose. Okay, the ending statement balance, this will come from this same place in Amazon Pay under Statement View. We're going to find June 18th, June 17 to 18. Okay, the ending statement balance, sorry, hang on a second. Sorry, June 18th to 19th. So it'll be the day, starting with the day that we're reconciling. And the ending balance will be up here, total balance, closing balance. Would be 822.12. 822.12. Okay, let's take a look. Down here you have unmatched transactions. Let's look at the matched transactions. So these are the ones that NetSuite found. Okay, we can expand them to compare. So we've got, this is what's in NetSuite, 2787, 2787, the same date. As of now, what NetSuite's looking for to figure out what are matching transactions, all it's got right now is the date and the amount. Okay, there's really nothing else to go on at this point because we haven't yet changed the API to pull any other details in there that would help NetSuite match it even more accurately. So for example, what we've got here, if you take a look, here's that memo field, that field from the memo, and here's the transaction ID. Neither of those are coming into NetSuite anywhere, and the customer name is blank because we don't have that from the Amazon report as of now, even though there's a name in NetSuite. But so this is how we're going to build off of this would be to get those fields in there to match it even more accurately or do better at matching it. But if you're looking, if you think about a typical bank account reconciliation, very often that's what you're basing on. You've got the date and the amount and the source. So initially, before we get those fields in, it will require a little bit of review just to make sure that it looks right, that there are no duplicate amounts on the same day, that you're not matching, But because the data in NetSuite is, the amounts are coming directly from the Amazon payment, I think that there is that fidelity there that at least gives you a comfort level that it's not like someone's manually entering amounts and they can make mistakes and put it in twice or something. So I think at least you have that benefit there. But anyway, so this matches those transactions. Let's see what it did not find. Okay, now let's go down. This is 522, so it's not relevant because we only created a statement for one day. So we've got there's three more on 618. Here are the GL transactions, right? So this is what's in NetSuite. Here are the statement transactions. This was on the statement that we've downloaded from Amazon. Okay, and as you can see here, there are three more. I honestly don't know why it did not match these three because the amounts are exactly the same, dates are exactly the same. But at least it's pretty easy to match them up. Okay, and then there's one more, $78 down here. Okay, so
bottom line is that you're running automation, and then whatever kickouts are, you can do them manually.
Exactly. So the bulk of them come in automatically. Let's match these two. So once you've clicked them, it shows up on the bottom of the screen, and it lets you click this blue button, match, to move them into your matched transactions. Okay, so now all of the payments that were in that came in from the customers are now matched. What have we got left? We've got the fees, bank fees, and the transfer, which is the previous day's, which in this particular case, it's the previous day's payments, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's net of a reserve amount like we saw. But the bottom line is there was a payout on that date to the bank, and then we have our fees. So even right here, this tells us, okay, this is the amount we need to book as a bank transfer into the operating account, and these are the amounts of the fees that we need to deduct. Okay, so what they can do is they can then open up they can either create a journal entry, by the way. If they click on this like this, then There's no match in NetSuite yet, so there's nothing in this area down here, but there is a link here to create a journal entry based on these transactions. We generally don't want to do that. We want to create actual transactions so that it's very clear what it is. So we would go here. Let's and create.
And why wouldn't we want to do that?
A journal entry?
Yeah, from that screen.
Well, for the fees we can. The fees are just it's pretty straightforward. But a transfer, the NetSuite has a tool, a bank transfer tool. It just accountants like to use journal entries, but everyone else and the users, it's always clearer if you have specific transaction types that relate to it. So if you're always using journal entries, you don't know, well, you have to look at the GL accounts and figure out what was this from, what is this for, why is there a journal entry, moving money around. If it's a transfer, you know exactly, okay, it's a bank transfer, it's moving from one account.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
I understand. So in other words, you're using the specific innate function rather than a generic. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand.
So you go to transactions, bank, transfer funds. From there.
And they have to do that every day. They have to deal with it, the daily transfer, bank transfer.
It can be, these reports can be run. Let's pretend it's for a wider date range. It doesn't have to be one day at a time. This can be done for a range. You can generate a report and select from June 1st through June 18th. Okay, and generate that and do the same steps and create that template. Which again, I'll have a macro that will just with a click of a button will put it in the right columns in the right format. You feed that into NetSuite. And then all you need to do is go here, and whatever the ending date was, that'll be the statement to select here to see what the ending balance was. So all you need from this page here is to get the ending balance, because on these reports show the transactions. They don't tell you. Sorry, not this one. Whatever. Any one of these. This tells you the individual transactions. It doesn't clearly tell you what the ending balance was. We can add this up, but still we don't know what the beginning balance was, so it doesn't really give us much information there. So that's why we would go here to get the ending balance, whatever that date was. So let's say we were doing from June 1st to June 18th. We do the same thing. We'd go here. The ending balance at the end of the day on June 18th was here, 8/22/12. And then we're going to import the statements from the 1st through the 18th. NetSuite will match what it can match. We'll try to match anything else that NetSuite doesn't match on our own just by comparing the amounts and the dates. And then any balances in here, this will contain the fees, and this will contain the transfer amounts. So now, again, if you're going to do a month at a time, it's going to be a little bit less clear to see what. It'll be harder because you'll have probably more manual things to match up. But I
imagine that this might be a daily and maybe every other day kind of activity, depending on what's on their plate. But
that would work.
I would definitely say that we need to be completely buttoned up for the start or the close. Right.
So the other, and here's the thing, and this relates back to what Vicky and Selena's concerns were, was that when I showed them this general idea, and I was working with the PayPal reports, which do more directly tie each bank transfer to the individual transactions behind it, but it will be a similar process. And their concern was, well, if you have how does this generate a report that's going to show us the details of every transfer into the operating account and the detailed transactions behind that? So when they're using the undeposited accounts tool and they're going through it and putting together the individual transactions and creating a deposit, that creates a record. Each deposit they can look at and they can see the details behind that deposit. Whereas in this reconciliation tool, you don't really see that. Every reconciliation, you can then run a report to show a bank report which will show you a similar idea. But if you've got more than one transfer on a given day, which you do sometimes have, or in the case of Amazon that we're looking at now, you have sometimes there's a reserve amount. So the balances don't, it'll be difficult to get out of NetSuite a report that shows here is the bank transfer and here are the individual transactions that were behind it, in a way that directly ties in a very easy way. Again, you can run the reconciliation tool and you'll see, okay, here's all the detailed transactions and here are the bank transfers and here's my ending balance, and my ending balance ties into my reports out of Amazon Pay, right? That these statements right here. The ending balance ties in. Here's the individual transactions that are cleared. Here are the transfers that were cleared, and these are the fees that were deducted from them. It's I think if in case of an audit, you would very relatively easily be able to show the paper trail of that, but they don't have that report that they're used to that shows the backup behind each deposit and each deposit individually by itself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that will be a question really for John. Like, is that something? How important is it to have that? And would it be sufficient to have a tool similar to, it really is a bank reconciliation tool, where you're showing that your individual transactions are cleared, you're showing how your bank fees are deducted, you're showing your transfers from the Amazon account into your operating account, and then obviously your operating account needs to be reconciled. But you've got that backup, and you can always trace it back to the Amazon reports here to show, okay, this was my ending balance, and here's what's behind it. Is that enough? Is that standard enough of a standard that John is comfortable with, or is there, or do we have to go back and think of a way how to get what Vicky and Selena are looking for, which is a really every single deposit showing its individual breakdown, tying back to it.
Understood.
Okay, so that's really what I have. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a process that can, more or less?
I mean, granted, from what I've seen them use in the past, this does not strike me as a difficult process. Again, there are a couple of open-ended things from this process that I have not seen, which is, I know you said you're working on a macro, which will convert the output from the gateway to the format that, I've seen you input here. So that is something that obviously you're working on, and as soon as you get that done, it's just a matter of running the macro and converting it to that format, correct?
Right.
So I presume that the macro will take into consideration all different types of gateways. So we have 3,
correct.
I believe.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
might have to create a different one for each one.
Yeah.
Or I can reach out to help from the programmers to Mark or Bhavan. They're more the programmers.
Yeah, I mean, I have a simple,
we can
knowledge of macros.
Yeah.
I can create them to the point,
right.
to the tune of, I will convert it specifically step by step each type
right.
of report. I don't know if I can combine it.
Right.
So that's fine. Then how does that work on a, what I would like to do is do obviously some UAT testing, running days at a time, if not weeks at a time, versus I don't know where it's gonna break down. On a small set of data, perhaps this is something that works really well. Does it do, for instance, manual matching, correct?
Right.
If it's 3 records, sure, you click the buttons the same way they've
right.
been doing it all along.
Right.
If we're talking about, processing, several days, several hundred of transactions, if not thousands, and,
right.
Ending up with, 400 unmatched transactions, how do we, I would definitely like to figure out what was the, the snag with those 3, then, especially if you've seen easily that it matches like you can visibly see the amount, see the date, see the type, right? So what is wrong there?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the, on the surface kind of questions that I have. As far as the interface and tools, it's pretty straightforward. I'm fine with that. Again, I think it's a little bit more streamlined and easy to digest, even from a non-accounting standpoint. But again, what I would like to do right now is, if you can send the file back to me, so I can share it to John, see what questions he might have, and then set up a, once you figure out the little kinks with this, to set up a session with Vicky and Selena, which I will be a part of. So just work around, picking the time that works for everyone, and then, sitting down and reconciling all the related transactions that are currently sitting unmatched. And actually, that would be a great test, going back to, several weeks of this. Like, what is it come down? Yeah.
Sure. That would be great. Let me ask you, is there, does Sandbox have any significant amount of transactions that, like, I don't know when the last refresh was done, would it have anything that I could work with and play around with in Sandbox to really get, I don't want
to... No,
this
is I don't know when the last refresh ran. I mean, granted that Baban and Marco are in Sandbox quite a lot. I would reach out to Shay about it, because I don't know whether it's been something that they've done as recent as today, or they were perfectly fine, holding a stale data in there for their purposes. So I can't answer that question off the top of my head.
Okay, sure.
But between Baban, Shay, and Marco, you'll be able to get that answer fairly quickly.
Okay. Okay, fine. So I will send that file over to you. I will send the recording, a link to the recording as well of this session, so you can share that with John. And again, and like you said, I think that the next steps will be have John review it. I'd love to hear his feedback on that question I had about their concern about, do we want the deposit do we want a record in NetSuite to tie the deposit into all the details, one deposit, individually by itself? And then, like
the best thing, now that I'm thinking, rather than me being the middleman, if you can send an email to me and John and pose the question and add the recording, I think I'll connect with him after the meeting.
Okay. I don't know if I have his email address. Was I CC'd?
It's rather simple. It's John, Jon, @boonsupply.com.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
.com. Okay. Very good, Vlad. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Hope this was helpful. And I guess we'll keep working.
It is. I think it's a step in the right direction. In my mind, I do have, again, a few reservations based on the amount. Like, this works rather seamless, with a small set of data. Right. And even then, it has a few, like 5 out of 14 is a.
That's true.
If you.
That's true.
Put a percentage against it, it's a little high.
That's true. Yeah, I agree.
So I want to see with a large subset of data what it will do.
Sure, that makes sense. And if needs be, we may need to say, okay, this will only, because of that high percentage that it does not match by itself, because it's only got the amount and the date to work with, then maybe we'll say, okay, this can only work if and when we get those other fields, the transaction IDs and the that settlement ID that's in the memo fields. If we can get them into NetSuite as part of the API, then obviously the matching will be NetSuite will do better at matching it. It'll find how to have
so
more.
what is it using? What's the matching principle right now? What is it?
Right now,
using
it's just dates and amounts. It's got nothing else in common because the customer names aren't showing up on the payment reports, and the transaction IDs are different because one's a NetSuite transaction ID and one's the Amazon transaction ID, and the settlement ID that I put into the memo field is only on the Amazon statement. We would have to get that into the memo field on the NetSuite side.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So, no, I was trying to string together a unique identifier, which will grant a much higher chance of match.
Right.
Because the amount, again, I don't know whether we're talking about, essentially, an amount that's been, perhaps it's like, I'm thinking basically a lookup, right? It looks for the first amount. If it's matched, it's not moving down, to the next available match. Maybe there's some, fundamental logic flaw there. Again, depending on the big subset of data, does it move beyond the next level? Like it found its match.
Right.
Like is it finding the one right below? For the same amount, for the same date.
Right. Right. So
because
two in the
several people can buy the same item,
and the amount will be the same. Right. Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
So that would be like a logic, flaw there. Mm-hmm. So I think in order to make this a more transparent process and much more automated, we absolutely need to consider bringing in each of the unique identifier from each gateway to make this work more seamlessly. Mm-hmm. So that's perhaps something that we can discuss with Marty and Nair.
Right.
And Marco on that, like the three of us.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Excellent.
We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.